Hi, and welcome back, everyone. I hope you've moved over to our next panel. We actually have been shifting a little bit based on connectivity. So we're going to start off right with our regional updates. We're very, very pleased to have the European Biochar Industry Group's Secretary General, Harald Bier, available to give us an update from the EU. Take it away, Harald.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. This is something you might have seen before from us. This is the key activities we're working on. It's on policy, on market intelligence, communication, and industry standards. Our main focus this year was certainly policy. We've employed personnel to work on that topic, especially its EU policy, but of course, with our national partners, we're also working on national legislations. And that's a very interesting thing because sometimes things are developing on a national basis and we can feed those developments into the EU policy, and sometimes it happens from the other direction, that we have a legislation on EU level which can be applied on the single market and therewith become relevant on a national scale of all the member countries. Market intelligence, you might know our market report that we submit annually. It's the public version is also accessible on our homepage. Our members get a bit more detailed version of it. We do a lot of communication. This is also why I'm here, and we are working on industry standards, mainly based on the EBC standards, where we're also, let's say, the gate of entry for industry players. Next slide, please. So our membership base has been growing, and especially we are happy that we reached our goal of over 75 members this year. We're almost 80 now, and we are continuing to grow, which gives us the basis to develop a lot further. One as EBI, and the other thing, of course, we are just what our members are. So all the successes, the success stories, they're basically based on their actions. So thanks to all our members here. Next slide, please. And next again. So I would like to talk about biochar and what we call pyrogenic carbon capture and storage. We decided to frame this in not only use the term biochar, as this is used in agriculture a lot. So we of course, this is what you know, biochar is a stable form of carbon. That is obtained through pyrolysis. It's a very highly versatile material, far more than agricultural uses. It's also used in materials, different types, construction materials, and also consumer goods. And then as an added service, let's say a climate service of the use of this material, we have pyrogenic carbon capture and storage. And this is enabling the capture and sequestration of atmospheric carbon through the carbonization. Carbonization is transforming carbon bonds that are, well, plants take up CO2, and if we carbonize the residues of those plants, transform carbon bonds into inert carbon, and I will talk about this inertness. This is also highlighted now in the IPCC, which again I would like to add a little bit to that discussion, but that's on another topic. Next, please. So this is basically the process. Some of you might have seen that already, but I think it's vital to explain what we're doing because, for example, in the IPCC, biochar is mentioned, but it's not really included the energy part of it. So what we do, we use a broad base of biomass for carbonization. And this is an exothermal process in most of the cases, at least, if you use the gas and the oil phase for energy production. And so you have CO2 or climate neutral energy, and you have a valuable product which stores carbon over very long periods of time and therewith creates negative emissions. Next, please. And again, next. So what I would like to talk about is negative emissions and the different sources of biomass, because we are far beyond only woody residues. And I think this is a very important issue. Just if you look at the scale that we want to achieve and the biomass availability. So I'll start with negative emissions because it's one of the most pressing factors at the moment. Next slide, please. The permanence of biochar is discussed a lot, and I would say it's all those discussions varying range of permanence, kind of given an insecurity to the market of carbon sinks based on biochar, and this is where we would like to look at it from a different angle again. So this is an analysis of different feedstocks pyrolyzed at different temperatures, 500, 700, and 900 degrees. It's a study that's work in progress, but it's preliminary results I would like to share with you. And what you see is that the carbon in the biomass as well as in the biochar are of different fractions. It's soluble organic matter, it's particulate organic matter, and it's oxygen-containing organic matter. And from the left to the right, from red, orange to green, and then this light blue, it's getting more inert, more difficult to decompose by bacteria. And then if you look at the biochar, everything that has 500, 700, and 900 next to it, then you see this orangey part of it, which is the inert carbon. Next slide, please. Inert carbon is actually a very recalcitrant, very inert material. And in the study that will be out soon, they show that in most cases, the biochar actually contains the most stable form of organic carbon that is available on the Earth's crust, which is inertinite maceral. Maceral is like mineral, but from organics. And this is supposed to be permanent over geological timescales. And it is, well, as I said, the most stable form of organic carbon that can be found on Earth. And if you go to the next slide. Yes, so in this figure, it shows how a low-ranking coal is geologically matured into the most stable forms of organic carbon on the right, which is anthracite. And this is due to geological pressure and temperature. And the preliminary results of the study shows that the degree of carbon ordering in most biochars is similar to the organic carbon molecules in this highest ranking coal, in anthracite or meta-anthracite, which is analyzed based on the reflection. And the reflection of most of the carbon in biochar seems to be very similar to this anthracite. So more on this topic will follow, and we will let you know. And now we move on to the next slide. So now we're on the topic of feedstock. Feedstock is also very important, as I said, for the production of biochars for different uses, of course, for functionality, but also from a resource point of view. We need to look at different feedstocks. So one of them, for example, is sewage sludge. We've written a position paper that we're just finalizing now, adding some more details, informations to it. And what we show there in this position paper is that we eliminate most of the problematic substances in sewage sludge and sewage sludge chars. These are organic pollutants, pathogens, PFAS, PFOAs, PAHs, and microplastics. And if you go to the next slide, microplastics also are very important for digestate, for example, because if you look at what comes out of most biogas plants, you have quite of a load of plastics in it, which end up in fields and turn into microplastics that you don't want. So this is a decent treatment way. Now here we have of one of our members, Pyrag, a graph showing the carbon footprint of phosphorus fertilizer made from sewage sludge. which is the only one that can actually have a negative CO2 emissions, which I think that's something that's really a game changer, that you have the possibility of producing phosphorus fertilizers with a negative carbon footprint. And also the contamination of those fertilizers is very low. So it makes it a very interesting product. Next slide, please. We have more input materials, more feedstock. One of circular carbon, for example, they are using cocoa shells, and they are producing through the carbonization process steam for chocolate or cocoa production facility. So substituting fossil resources. Next, please. And now we go to applications. Next. Application next again starts with science. If you take thanks. So 80% of all the scientific papers have been published in the last 5 years. This is something I would always bear in mind if one is looking at literature reviews. There might be something that is more recent. Next, please. And the range of applications, I think most of you have seen this. This is from our white paper. We have the agricultural uses. Next, we have urban applications, which are gaining importance here in Europe. It was born in the Nordic countries, Sweden particularly, but now we're also using it in many more countries and spreading it because it's a very viable business case to feed biochars in urban environments for tree planting and parks. Next, please, and next again. And next. So we also use it in construction materials. One thing that we've done a bit more than a year ago, next please, is we have used it in concrete. And next, doesn't it show up? Yes, we've used it in concrete. And we've built the first blocks of concrete that are actually load bearing. And now a year later, a bit more than a year later, we have several walls, floors, and even houses built. I will come to that in a minute. Next, please. This was the first load bearing block that we constructed. Then next, this was followed up by a wall, a flooring, and then also by side walls. Next. And another one. Yes, see, now we have larger constructions even that are made out of this type of concrete. And it's actually stronger than average concrete, and it has next a climate neutral, let's say, depending on how you look at it, effect. Next, please. This was even family homes are even built out of that material. So if you look at the carbon balance, you have we could replace 15% of the concrete, of the cement and concrete, which takes off some of the emissions because cement production is actually quite carbon intensive. Then you have the carbon storage through the biochar that's included, or the biocarbons, biogenic carbons included in the material. And then you have a little residue left of carbon footprint. If you look at the recarbonization rate according to IPCC, you have a definite climate positive construction material here. So next slide, please. Also done that with asphalt. This is also a slide that's a bit more than a year old. Next, please. And this is the first tests. So there was no difference to average asphalt. Next, 2% of the asphalt have been replaced, and that adds up to be a climate positive end product. This is just the asphalt layer. Next, please. This is wall claddings by our member Made of Air that they're doing, aesthetically very, very attractive, but also they have some very interesting properties, surface properties, and they're made out of over 85% atmospheric carbon. Next, please. So we can definitely replace conventional building materials with climate positive ones. Next, this seems not to work. Yeah, so this is a video. I hope you can see it. This is the next generation, I would almost say, of materials. Can you try to play the video? No, you can't. Oh, too bad, because it's additive manufacturing. So this is a 3D printed element. Well, the one you saw before was a 3D printed element with biocarbons in like a polymer material. And additive manufacturing also has the advantage that you don't produce waste. Actually, what you need, all the material that you need is what you will use in this production method. Next, please. So we'll come to the market, the most recent market report, and the next one will be out beginning of next year. But you see, next, and next, and I guess another one. We have a very strong growth. This year we had a growth rate of about 85%. Next. And next again. Sorry, I made the slide to scroll through myself. So you see the accumulated growth rates. Next, please. This leads us to an actual production of 40,000 tons in Europe. And this is not all the carbons that are produced, but it's only the actual biochars with EBC grade quality that are used in a carbon conserving way for agriculture or for long-lasting building materials, so where the carbon will not be oxidized into CO2. So next, please. And next again. I have to hurry up a little bit because I'm running out of time. Next. So our important goal, and this is what we have achieved this year, was we created carbon sinks, long-lasting carbon sinks in the order of 100,000 tons of CO2 equivalents in Europe this year. And this makes us by far the largest carbon sink that's existing, the largest technical one. So if you want to, we're looking at the scaling options. If we continue with a growth rate of a little less than this year, 80%, until 2026, we would reach 1 megaton of carbon, 1 million tons carbon sequestered. Next one. And next. And by 2030, we could reach 10 million tons. Next. Next. And next. And that would be the stretch goal. If we continued, and this is a bit ambitious, with 80% of growth, we could reach the 100 million tons of carbon removed by annually by 2034. Next. Yes, thank you. And this would lead us to being rather close to the EBI target if we continued for two more years. Our target is 255 million tons of CO2 equivalents removed annually through biochar. And this would be about 30% of the necessary carbon sinks we would need if we decarbonize the economy to 85%. So I'm sorry, but the slide saying next, if I made my slides a bit too complicated. I hope this was not too bothering for you. Thank you a lot. And I hope you had a decent connection to be able to see that.
Thank you so much, Harald. And we'll have some questions for you at the end after the rest of our presentations. We're going to move now to have a presentation from Asia Pacific and China in particular. We'll have an update from IBI board member Genxing, who is the science leader in the study of agriculture and climate change at Nanjing Agricultural University.
Hello, this is Genxing from Nanjing Agricultural University, China. It's a great pleasure for me to talk about biochar in the ANZBIG Biochar Symposium. And this is for raising the climate ambition to promote CO2 removal in agriculture. Why we are advocating biochar for agriculture, that only biochar carbon provides quality organic matter for healthy soil because it's of the structure, the reactivity, and also the bioactivity, and it promotes soil aggregation that can manipulate organic matter with microbial in the pores in and between the macroaggregates, and in this way can provide synergies of functions that storing, protecting, provisioning, and regulating nutrients, carbon, water, and also the substances that are important to environment. And only biochar carbon could provide multiple functions and benefits in fields, not only for crop production, also for biodiversity and for aquifer quality, that is clean the environment. And finally, it's a big contribution, that is natural contribution, storing carbon to avoid emission to air. And what kind of the feedstock can be used for making biochar? Soil organic matter derives from the waste from the growing plants in the soil. However, for biochar, we have a lot of the sources, bio-waste. For example, in China, we have almost 1 gigaton of crop straw and half gigaton livestock manure, and also 35 million tons of municipal waste, plus 40 million tons green waste in the urbans. And convert all this waste into biochar can help to enhance soil organic matter, not only quality, but also the functioning. And biochar provides the increase of organic matter in soils quickly and persistently, and also provides diverse of organic carbons, material and molecules, and with the education, it can be physically stabilized. So it's much better than the straw itself than animal manure. And this is one reason that biochar contains the stable micropores that vary in size from nano to a number of microns. And this is a structure benefits for soil, for aggregation, also have a surface reactivity and also biostimulating for root. Root has a special response to this kind of biochar. This is a way how people made biochar from crop residue in China before 2015, and we collect in the field the crop straw and chopped it into the particles and then polarized in the vertical kiln, not automatically controlled, and then to produce the biochar ground into the powders. But under the microscope, you can still see the plant structure and preserving the micropores in the biochar. So the privilege of the porosity of the biochar can be used to enhance, to promote soil aggregation, that in agricultural soils that promote root growth. And also we can utilize the reactivity of the biochar carbon that to immobilize nutrients, also immobilize metals, toxic metals in the soil to ensure the food security, also to ensure nitrogen use efficiency. But also we can utilize a small portion of the labile carbon from the biochar. It contains a number of the bioactive molecules beneficial to roots and also microbials. And this is the only example showing how biochar amendment to soil helps soil fertility, helps soil productivity, and also helps carbon sequestration. One-time application lead to 10 grams per kilogram carbon increase, and meanwhile we have the more larger aggregates. So in this way, we improve soil structure very significantly, markedly different, and then we promote post growth. This is no biochar, and this is biochar means rice. A very big difference. And also it can be linked to soil health and plant health. This is no biochar amended field, and this is a biochar amended plant rice plants become much healthier than this one, have the net prices of 5%. You can see this. And also the soil structure is much porous, and we have a deeper pore layer, 5 centimeter deeper, and for free root growth compared to this shallow soil, and the root is much shallow within 12 centimeters. So we can utilize the privilege of the biochar porosity and also the functional molecules to produce biochar-based compound fertilizer. And also we put biochar organic matter to combine with the minerals, nutrients in soil aggregate shape form. In this way to slow release nutrients and also to increase soil aggregation. So this is the second generation of our biochar blended compound fertilizer, and it's widely advocated. This is in field demonstration, and this is the appreciation by the Vice Minister of Agriculture. And now the biochar-based fertilizer will have the third generation like this, and compared to the first generation, this. And the second and the third generation have converted in higher plant productivity. For example, rice almost 10% and the potato 12%. So average we have the 11% of plant growth increase compared to the chemical fertilizer. And this is due to the slow releasing and also longer retention of the nutrients, particularly nitrogens. So in this way we have 12 days longer retention compared to the urea. And also with the biochar compound fertilizer we have 48 absolute nutrient use efficiency compared to 33 mineral nitrogen. So this is a very huge increase of nitrogen use efficiency with biochar blended fertilizer. And again, this is related to the promoted root growth with the biochar functional compounds inside. And you can see the roots is much better improved with the biochar compound fertilizer compared to the chemical fertilizer. And this is the soybean cyst rapeseed. And so as shown in the field, biochar compound fertilizer improve plant growth and also improves plant resilience to stress, to drought, also to the extreme climate events. This is collapse with the chemical fertilizer. This is no collapse with the biochar fertilizer. And we have increase of the yield, and we save 200 kilograms chemical fertilizer per hectare. And again, biochar-based fertilizer can boost the green production and also boost carbon capture in saline straight fields. This is a field demonstration in northwest China. We have 2 more tons per hectare increase of the rice in the saline fields, and we have saved a lot of the chemical nutrients also. And this is another case showing the rapeseed increase. You can compare very clearly. This is the biochar blended fertilizer, this is the chemical fertilizer. And we have a much better improvement of the fruit crops, fruit size, fruit vitamin C and the sugar, and also you can compare the appearance of their fruits. And generally, we have 20% of the plant quality improved with biochar blended soil, and very confidentially and greatly increase the VC and greatly reduce nitrate in the agro products. So in this way, biochar is so good to promote soil structure, to promote growth, and also to promote the natural use efficiency. So we would like to use biochar to be a partner with organic manure. So that in this way we produce biochar manure compost from the swine, from the cow manures, and into this very porous, clean, no odor, novel organic fertilizer. And this kind of organic fertilizer can be used directly as soil amendment and directly to rebuild the soil that is removed, for example, in mining area, in abandoned area. And also can be used for quickly restore the degraded soil. For example, this vegetable soil is very compacted, and with this organic amendment, with biochar manure compost, we have a much better the root systems compared to the chemical conventional technology. And we have the increase of pipe yield by 58 and the vitamin increase 73 and even soluble protein by 60%. So very huge improvement of the vegetable in this organic biochar organic fertilizer amended soil. And this is applied also in Chinese medicine crops like ginseng. We have higher yield. Also, we have a higher quality of the ginseng containing more ginsenol seeds. So this provides the opportunity to develop the biochar business in China. And this is one example showing the crop production is coupled with biochar production and recycling in the closed loop. And we have the crop residue pyrolyzed in this industrial system, and we have the biochar, we have the syngas for heating, and we have the biochar liquid for the foliar fertilizer. So we have one biochar, we have 3 different types of the biochar-based fertilizers. So in this way, in the rural area, we have the biochar business like that, collection, processing, and polarizing and making the biochar blend fertilizer and applied to the crop production. And also in the urbans in South China, and we are developing some technology that polarizing municipal waste with green waste and to produce compost biochar and used for cropland, also for wastewater treatment. And a business is developing with crop store collection and in situ polarizing in the rural area. So in this way, saving the cost of the transportation and the cost of the storing. So in this way, using the biochar-based technology, we can develop some healthy agriculture and healthy rural economy with the waste into biochar and for healthy soil, for healthy foods. And in North China, there is a special large-sized biochar industry where have the big amount of the feedstock collection and storage, and also polarizing into a single biochar to produce good quality biochar compound fertilizer and applied or recycled again to the agriculture there. To promote this kind of carbon saving and nitrogen saving technology and treating the waste in the rural area, China has developed a number of the state policies and standards. For example, The Kyoto Biochar Fertilizer Protocol is approved as a biomass recycling industry in 2018 by the Ministry of Environment. And also 2 years ago, a biochar-based organic fertilizer guideline and the standard was approved by Ministry of Agriculture. And these are the official documents. They are releasing the incentives for the biochar industry and the business. So biochar production application in China is developing quite fast. Totally will have per annum 500 to 700,000 tons biochar production, and including agrochar that used in agricultural soil is 50 to 70,000 tons in last year. So under the carbon neutral strategy, biochar is increasing used to improve the cropland quality and the crop productivity. This is one example how the people are using biochar to the cropland, and you can see the soil became easily tilled compared to the no biochar soil, as it became very porous and soft. Particularly, biochar compound fertilizer should be taken into global action because it uses a smaller portion of biochar but give much better feedbacks to the agriculture, to the environment. So this is all of my presentation. I thank all of you for the attention, and also I thank my colleagues and the funding agencies. Thank you again.
My apologies, John. You're on.
Oh, I am. Oh, hi everybody. My name's John Webster, and let's go ahead and bring up the slides. I know I only have a few minutes here, so I'll do my best to fill the time.
All right, can everybody hear me? All right, thank you so much. I want to thank IBI for putting on this fantastic event. Take just a moment and say hello and provide everybody with an update on North American biochar. And I want to start out by acknowledging Tom Miles, the Executive Director for the U.S. Biochar Initiative. Tom has been a stalwart. He is a machine. He has done so much for the biochar industry in North America, and we all owe him a great gratitude and personal debt. All right. Team highlights for U.S. Biochar Initiative. Within the last year, we've added another board member, Deborah Aller, and she, you can see her credentials here, is an extension associate and a program coordinator for the New York Soil Health Program at Cornell University. Deborah is a great contribution to the team. So, and then I'm also the new guy. My name's John Webster. I'm the new Director of Communication and Fundraising for U.S. Biochar. I'm a board member for a little over a year or so. There's my connections on there, so please reach out on LinkedIn. And I'm super happy to be a part of this team, and there has literally never been a better time to be involved with biochar. The industry is booming. I don't know about you, but when I get up and check my inbox every day, boom, and there's all this information about everything that's going on. Wow, what an amazing difference just a few years can make. So what's the status of USBI in North America? Some of our projects and conferences, there's a big list here, but we work with groups like the USDA, NRCS, AFT on Project 3336. We do develop fact sheets and roadmaps. We do outreach and education with a number of groups. We're working on Charboss demos. We're doing workshops like our Biochar in the Woods. We've done our conferences like the Biochar 2022 in Morgantown, West Virginia. We have the Verge Expo that we attended with IBI. Thank you for doing that with us. We had a booth at the American Society of Landscape Architects just about a month ago, and it was fantastic. So lots of valuable learning. So the upcoming events include things like StormCon. We work with the Biochar Urban Task Group, and we are working with International Standards Organization subcommittees on biochar material standards. So there's quite a bit on this list. It's frankly quite a little too much to even announce all of it. Some of the conferences that we've done over the last year include Society of American Foresters, the International Biochar Conference and Expo, Forest Products Society, forest biomass utilization, regional agricultural events. We have a monthly webinar with the U.S. Forest Service that Tom gives every month. We work with the Water Environment Federation and their conference. We had a USBI board member at COP27. That's Kathleen Draper. Thank you for being there. Verge 22, again, we attended thanks to IBI. And the upcoming conferences that we have are the Composting Council Conference that's coming up in January of 23, and then the Stormwater Conference and the International Biomass Conference and Expo. There'll be a number of other opportunities as well. Some of our bigger 2022 updates are that we have continued support from the U.S. Forest Service and new funding from the U.S. Endowment to help develop markets, provide technical support, education, and develop special products like the Char Boss. USBI has engaged Fountain Works to help us develop the administrative structure for expanding our activities and complying with grants. This is going to help us quite a bit with our forward-moving plans. Status on USBI. Plan stakeholder engagement to develop appropriate organizations to support industry, academia, and biochar users. There's a strong industry from the industry at Biochar 2022 and other events that they want to see us support the market more actively. That is one of my personal goals with my role at USBI. Some of the new fact sheets that we have out are on carbon markets, stormwater management, soil media, and we're working on a biochar roadmap. There's also a fact sheet on compost. And then the upcomings include vineyards, manure management, and more. So also the directory listing, a number of our producers are already familiar with this. We've been working on it. We plan to enhance what it does. And this directory continues to drive interest to our producers and distributors. So if you're not on there, please go to our website and reach out and sign up for the program. Again, there will be some changes coming. So USBI grant participation in collaboration with American Farmland Trust and USDA Agricultural Research Service to demonstrate agricultural uses of biochar. That was just announced a couple of months ago. Real interesting program. I look forward to sharing progress with you on that. So communications updates. So we're working on scheduling. What's that mean? It means that we're updating the communication tools that we have. We're going to update our email. We're going to include appointment scheduling, public events calendar. So things will just be published. And if you want to find out what's going on, you'll have access on our website or through a calendar subscription. We plan to bring you more webinars. That's been a big request from our audiences. Monthly webinars featuring academic and practitioner viewpoints on relevant topics. So such as the upcoming 336, manure management, in-field application, ag scale, small scale, CSA, every level we plan on doing more and more participatory events with these webinars. Chat and messaging. So we're looking to revamp and kind of modernize. So we've been looking at tools like Slack, Discord, possibly for some chat, creating and populating a Substack, and expanding our presence on Reddit and the biochargroup.io for both just the primary biochar group, as well as Kelpie's Biochar in the Woods group. Public engagement. We've been building a list of press and media contacts and working with them to distribute relevant stories, actively utilizing social media in order to leverage that information, including sites like LinkedIn, Instagram, not really TikTok, but some of a lot of the other mainstream Twitter and et cetera. So we're also making USBI board members and experts available for things like podcasts and news stories, webinars, public speaking events, et cetera. So if you have something, please reach out to me, communications@biochar-us.org. We're happy to help however we can. Again, we have some pending fact sheets and we'll release those, and you can watch for those in our newsletter. And yes, please remember to sign up for our newsletter. It's fantastic. The North American industry changes and opportunities, there's a lot of those. Carbon credits are a real impact. They are providing access to capital for biochar producers. We're hearing from producers that are able to secure funding based on credit opportunities. So it is working, it is advancing the industry. It is not the magic bullet for the industry. It is one tool to get our pathway to progress and scale. So very exciting. We're noticing a growth in production and producers, meaning that we're now reaching 150 to 200 producers and brokers. We have a whole lot of new small producers that are coming on, as well as major industrial biochar project and planning that'll do 20,000 tons per year of biochar. That is a typo. It's 20,000 tons per year. I'll fix that in the final document. And there's a biochar industry survey that we'll be performing for USBI in 2023. Significant interest by foreign entities looking to locate in the US as producers and equipment suppliers. So that's been very interesting, especially with the new federal incentive programs that are coming up every day. They're finding more and more cause to invest in the United States and soil health and the larger biochar industry. It's very exciting. We have increased interest from VCs. So Verge was very encouraging. A number of us at the booth literally had VC folks come up and say, we have money, we're looking to invest. So we've been conversing with them. And you know what? There's also this new company called Grain Ecosystem. They are new, but they're backed by a large organization, and they're dedicated almost exclusively to biochar project finance. So this is a real unique development in the market and very exciting for the biochar in North America. Oh, and we all know that climate opportunities demand scale, and the key federal programs are driving the market. So for example, the 45Q carbon capture tax credit, USBI is providing comments for the program updates. We're involved at policy. There is biochar in the infrastructure bill. There's the biochar bill, the biochar research bill, et cetera. USBI has been educating congressional staff, so for senators and congressmen, in collaboration with other organizations. USBI provides support for the U.S. Forest Service Wood Innovation Program. Project funding may be used to establish, reopen, retrofit, expand, and improve a sawmill or other wood processing facility in close proximity to federal or Indian lands that needs ecosystem restoration and will generate byproducts. So the link is available there. I do want to give a shout out to James Gaspard from Biochar Now and the work that he's been doing with tribal communities. It's really admirable and fantastic. It's the right direction for the industry. Also, there's the new National Biochar Research Network Act of 2022, implemented by Grassley, Tester, Thune, and Brown. So this will develop research protocols on biochar so that we can have a catalog and a better understanding of biochar, how it performs, and suitability for purpose. So as part of that, USBI will be holding a two-day deep dive into the USDA NRCS Code 336 Soil Carbon Amendment Program, which will pay, depending on market, it can pay upwards of $200 a cubic yard for the biochar. So that is the material that it pays for. As well, it pays for installation. There are some caveats to it. It does require a nutrient management program or some other codes, the NRCS codes, to be implemented with it. It's not just throwing only carbon in the soil that qualifies. But again, this is government policy driving market. So, and there's significant funding available. So, and we do have sponsorship opportunities for the webinar. So if you're interested, please reach out. Biochar is in the news. It's constantly in the news. So we have things about improving existing industries like climate impact of dairies. It's not uncommon to see biochar companies in startup competitions. We have green roofs and engineered soils that are showing up utilizing biochar. Carbonators. So they're for dealing with hazardous fuels. Those are getting more and more attention as the need gains attention from the public and lawmakers and states. Interesting story. Somebody's converting the diapers. They have basically a vending machine for diapers, and you can send them back and have those converted into biochar. And somebody's even mentioning the use of funerary biochar. So real interesting. So again, climate opportunities demand large-scale production. Mitigation and adaptation for renewable energy to sequester carbon, increase soil carbon, increase value. So we have millions of acres of material that's available. We need to reduce the hazardous waste. We can find ways and develop markets, so that way the conversion of the biomass into biochar can substantially improve overall suitability for purpose in soil and other applications, although I am personally a fan of biochar in soil. Biochar markets and the uses, they continue to grow. This is really fantastic news. So, we already mentioned the carbon markets driving things with the offsets and the carbon credits. As well, we see the continuing interest in soil health. So we have agricultural, retail, turf management, landscape, orchards, vineyards, and horticulture, all showing great interest in growing their markets in North America. So, and we're also seeing combinations like biochar with fertilizer to extend the values. And I expect that we're going to see more and more as the months and years go by. Biochar is increasingly used for environmental remediation and erosion control, revegetation, biosolids, urban soils, erosion control, wetlands, odor control is a very popular use for biochar in industrial animal situations. And for use with remediating persistent herbicides and the PFAS concerns. Water quality, ongoing participation in water quality and water management practices. I expect we're going to see that grow more and more. Groups like Glanris with their really nice particle size, really unique in market. It's again, one of the challenges that we see will have innovative biochar producers come up with a new meaningful material, but then they have to educate those sectors. US Biochar Initiative seeks to help educate those sectors and develop their new markets. So, and again, forestry, it's a no-brainer. We need to remove the hazardous fuels, and converting that hazardous fuel to a usable carbon product to fortify soils rather than just burning it to ash and air pollution is in everybody's best interest. So we're seeing increasing attention and desire for such conversion practices, and we're seeing more and more companies come to market with, hopefully, with solutions to this. Some of the practitioners, that's who we owe a lot of these efforts to, the people with boots on the ground, hands in the dirt, making a difference. We need more practitioners. So whatever you can do to encourage the market, please do so. And then we have a lot of buy-in from the cities and municipalities. And Bloomberg funding helped with that quite a bit as well. So biochar products are very big for environmental management, nutrients, metals, roadside erosion control, water runoff, tree management. It's all part of the narrative. And again, the use of biochar with trees is really fantastic. A lot of folks in the US are starting to utilize the Stockholm tree pit technology and process for engineered soils. And we see companies like Bartlett and Davy Tree coming in and really seeing a lot of progress and success rates by implementing biochar into their tree planting strategies. We're going to see increased use by municipalities and state and federal agencies to repair urban soils, roadside controls, et cetera. And we're finding new and innovative ways every day to incorporate biochar as a material into elements like construction blocks, wood building, asphalt. There's the Four Corners Carbon Coalition that's looking for ways to utilize biochar in cement to reduce the carbon load. So again, siding, drywall, insulation, it's all very exciting and new entrants to the market every day. Biochars are produced in mobile, modular, and industrial systems. We see a range of systems here, including starting out with Kelpie's Ring of Fire, and then we move up through a number of the modulars, things like the Charboss, the High Plains, Biomecon is very cool. They have another one that's also really interesting that we'll show in a later slide. And then, all the way to the industrial with Pyreg and Oregon Biochar Solutions and their modified wood boiler. So again, on-site production has lots of attention. We need a way to convert those hazardous fuels or the remnants after a fire. This is that way we can increase the safety of the landscape and the environment, and work on the regenerative healing of the landscape. And biochar is an excellent fit for that. This small scale market is really picking up a lot of steam. We have folks like Pyrofarm. They have this, effectively they're utilizing the pyrolysis process to heat their buildings and create an amount of biochar. Really innovative process. Kathleen Draper covered a story on this not too long ago. And then Rowdy Yates and his Rocket Chart 301. This thing is also very cool. The folks at OFX use one of these. They take one to each of their sites where they're capping the mines. They're utilizing this to make a sufficient amount of biochar in order to do two things. One, work for their capping strategies and heat their outbuildings. So multi-use, multi-purpose, that is key. Biochar suits a lot of answers. Bulk biochar from biomass energy, we are seeing this influence the market pricing. So there's literally hundreds of tons, or thousands of tons coming out of this industry. They can modify their processes, so that way instead of burning everything just to a low grade ash, they're leaving a high carbon, real nice carbon material for wide range of uses. So again, we were talking about recovering biochar from urban wood boilers, the modular systems like ArtiChar, also very suitable for urban use. So mixed use, I anticipate we'll see a number of these types of machines installed in large scale agriculture applications. The small scale combined heat and biochars for urban use, again, district heating, building heating, and other applications, behind the pole applications where large amounts of biomass are available readily. It's a fantastic use. Urban wood heats, ethanol plant with biochar co-products, real interesting project. So we can see that it's developing commercial outlets for their products. Again, urban wood turning into biochar to utilize in compost for those municipal applications. So greenhouse, odor control, compost. The use case is unlimited effectively. And then we're also seeing a lot of innovative waste management strategies with pyrolysis, such as dealing with things like biosolids, manures. We're seeing increased interest in its use in digestates. And I think we're going to continue to see that advance, especially as the price of activated carbon is challenged by some of these high-grade biochar. Business opportunities in the new green economy. This is booming. So there's constantly groundbreaking going on. We're being told all the time about new projects that are coming online for some of our established producers, and then also the new producers that are coming to market. Going through permitting, getting everything lined up, funding secured, and that is key. Funding secures scale. Biochar is a farmer's friend. Biochar fixes carbon. It's safe, it's scalable, and it's shovel ready. Just add biochar. So I want to thank you. It was a real pleasure to present this to you. I look forward to our next meeting, and again, look forward to our Code 336 webinar. And if you have any questions, just reach out. Thank you so much. And thanks again, IBI.
John, thank you so much, especially for being a trooper, quick on your feet. Could you make sure to post the link to the webinar that'll be next week in the chat so everyone can go to that?
Yes, I will do that.
Excellent.
Good morning or afternoon in America. I'm Don Coyne, CEO of ANZ Biochar Industry Group, or ANZBIG for short. And thank you very much to Wendy and Kathleen, particularly at the IBI, for inviting me to give a regional update on behalf of ANZBIG at the 2022 Annual Symposium, Raising Climate Ambitions with Biochar. My presentation today is a little bit different. I have done this at a couple of other events, which included the Climate Link Deep Dive into Biochar event but also the recent ICHAR, Italian School of Biochar. So I feel that the best way I can give an update is refer you to our website, because it is always there for people to refer to, and it gives the best overview of where we're up to, all in one place. So firstly, we're about promoting drawdown, and the ANZ Biochar Industry Group assists companies, governments and institutions in the effective use and production of biochar. ANZBIG focuses and streamlines biochar education, research, collaboration and commercialisation activities to provide better outcomes for the societies of Australia and New Zealand. And we do a lot of advocacy, and there's Harald Bier. Hi, Harald, from European Biochar Industry Consortium, who was part of our recent biochar in aerobic composting webinar. So why join ANZBIG? Our main focus areas are policy, market intelligence, communication standards, and you could add finance to that as well now. Some of our founding members, just so you know, include New World Pavement Solutions with their biomix with 20% biochar in it, Rainbow Bier with their clean syngas, particularly in protected cropping, and with biochar and wood vinegar, I understand. Greenman Char with their char maker. They are setting up in a lot of municipal council, landfill type sites doing green waste, but they also have a facility at Coyne Oil with all the eucalyptus oil or mallee trash, if you like. CETA Group, who have a novel part gasification and pyrolysis technology, which focuses on green hydrogen and biochar. We've got Carbon Standards International, who we've been talking to about partnering with on our certification program, yet to be confirmed. They attended our recent summit. The syndication group is focused very much, or is one of the largest, owner of trust land for biodiversity credits in Australia now. And Stephen Joseph, Professor Stephen Joseph, who is a visiting professor at UNSW, UNE, University of Wollongong, and the Nanjing Agricultural University. So ANZBIG has boards with a vast array of experience and skills. So we warmly welcome now Professor Ross Garnaut as our patron. And Professor Garnaut is Australia's most influential thinker on economic and climate policy, offering pragmatic solutions to complex problems that are tempered by a long career in international economics, business and public policy. So we feel this is a great coup for ANZBIG and biochar in Australia and New Zealand. Our executive board, so Nigel Murphy, who's co-founder and director of Earth Systems and Cyclic Carbon, which is the Greenman biochar and wood vinegar brand. We've got Peter Burgess, who is director at Rainbow Bier. Myself as CEO, coming with a horticultural and adult training and frontline management type background. Melissa Rebick, who is particularly active in the regenerative agriculture space, and she's the director of climate and agricultural support and has a wonderful website with a lot of scientific data on it. Professor Stephen Joseph, of course, who you all know, and continues to be a key member of ANZBIG and has been right there from the beginning. Craig Bagnall also has become a key member, a very knowledgeable and active person in the Australia-New Zealand biochar space, and that's kind of now filtering out worldwide. So thank you for all of that you do, Craig, who leads a lot of our submissions, as does Melissa. Dennis Enright is our link to our sister organisation, the Biochar Network of New Zealand, and all of our membership fees now, New Zealand-based members, those membership fees do return to New Zealand, and the Biochar Network of New Zealand carry out those activities and programs on the ground. And Hilary Furlong is a seasoned public relations person who's now retired, but is very helpful in her advice, and is quite active as a climate activist as well. And then we go on to our advisory board, who we have a really broad and range of people with different experience and skills, researchers, entrepreneurs, government organisations, the finance sector, and also some corporates there as well. So we have a vast array of experience, and you can join our newsletter for free updates if you would like to do that. We also, just to mention, now have had our first National Biochar Awards, and we had there's the list of the award winners there. So Doug Powell, who many of you may have heard of, he fed biochar to his cows and used dung beetles to bury it. So he was announced the Biochar User Award. Miles Pope from Soil Pro in New Zealand is the largest distributor of biochar in New Zealand, now about 5,500 tonnes per annum. That's high carbon boiler ash, classified as a biochar. The producer of the year was Stuart Larson from Soft Agriculture and Mara Seed. The Biochar Research Award went to Shala Hosseini Bey at the University of Queensland, and the Student Award went to Sajana Adhikari of University of Melbourne, and David Gangel, who's with an intern with New World Pavement Solutions. And the Hall of Fame inductees were Russell Burnett, of all things biochar, previously Applied Gaia, Professor Stephen Joseph, of course, Annette Cowie, and Lucas Van Sweeten, both from the New South Wales DPI, have done some amazing early research work and continue to do so. Annette Cowie has also been involved with, integral in getting the IPCC to recognise biochar as a drawdown technology, negative emissions technology. In relation to just membership, so some of the benefits and details there are that you can, connect. So you get access to our 165 plus active member library. You also have access to our 5-year-old library of reports, webinars, past conferences, and papers by category. Also, we develop, we're doing a lot of advocacy type work and research, but also support. So we can help you and support. Good to be part of a network. It makes life easier, and also we do offer discounts. And there's the various levels there, starting from student and going right up to foundational. And there's some of our organisational and corporate members. We do have quite a number of water utilities now, and this is a big part of this space, is that a lot of the water utilities are now going down the biosolids biochar journey. So it's quite exciting. Also, one of our main programs for the year is to produce a biochar industry 2030 roadmap. So we the industry raised 200,000 to produce this roadmap and to hold a stakeholder engagement summit, which we held in the Adelaide Hills, South Australia, back in September. So the roadmap is aimed at developing an overall strategic direction for the biochar industry and ensuring the scale up of capability and capacity and supporting market development both here in Australia and New Zealand as well as globally. And the roadmap will also highlight the products, services and benefits available within various markets, align biochar's benefits to the objectives of government, industry and the community at large, and define and mainstream the requirements of carbon neutrality and beyond through clear carbon accounting methodologies and robust verification. So you can watch our launch. We had a launch webinar in March of this year. You can download presentation slides. You can look at a sponsor pitch deck there. We always are looking for sponsors and it's not too late. As mentioned, we did run a stakeholder engagement summit, which was excellent, and it was led by our main contributors or those that are collating the roadmap, which is Russ Martin at MS2 and Sean Scallon at Sustainability Plus, and they ran a series of biochar industry roadmap interactive discussions. So we collected some real gold in those sessions, which will be got real buy-in from the industry to go into our roadmap. So we thank all our sponsors that helped us raise that 200,000, and we now, as we go into the public launch or release of the roadmap, that is going to be at Parliament House on Friday, March the 3rd, and we seek government funding to roll out the roadmap action plan. So that's some really exciting stuff there. We also, of course, run ongoing events. So we do run webinars similar to the IBI. We are working on a certification program, rolling out a certification program. This is based on our code of practice for sustainable production and use of biochar in Australia and New Zealand. And, we have been seeking expressions of interest now closed from a partner that has experience in certification, like a certifying body. And we aim to, run a webinar and announce that in 2023, early 2023, if everything goes to plan. And so that not only incorporates standards of biochar, and we do have various grades of biochar, which, start at the top being premium grade, that could be used for animal feed, for instance, and going right down to industrial grade B, looking at feedstocks and biochars which may have a level of impurities in them and, would be better used in non-soil application. But it's also, we will have a carbon sink registry based on the life cycle assessment, and the producers can enter that registry, and the carbon sink can be traced until it reaches a location where it is retired, where we know it will stay for at least 100 years. And we run Stephen Joseph runs a wonderful interactive workshop over 2 days, so groups can purchase that web workshop in their region. As mentioned, also there's a number of free resources on our resources page, and these can all be downloaded. So ANZBIG is active when it can be, drawing upon our boards, the experience, technical expertise of our boards, to put in good submissions. Recently, we had the South Australian inquiry, a government inquiry into biochar, and this was led by Melissa Rebick, our board member, and supported particularly by Craig Backnell as well from Cedar Group, but input also from Professor Stephen Joseph, Annette Cowie, and myself. So that submission actually gives you a quite a good summary of what's happening in the biochar industry in particularly South Australia, but is relevant to all of Australia and New Zealand. So there's a number of case studies in there. We've also got current and possible future uses of biochar. We've got the emerging uses of biochar, the potential health impact of the production, use and consumption of biochar, the environmental impact. So, yeah, a really good summary there. If you'd like to download that free, you can dive in deeper into that. Also, the compliance market we did a submission to the independent review of the Australian carbon credit units recently, and this was also led by Annette Cowie and Craig Bagnall once again, particularly, and this is just encouraging the panel to recognise the benefit of developing an emissions reduction fund method for biochar. Currently, you can use biochar as an input, but it does not recognise the initial content of the biochar. It only equates for the biochar built-in soil carbon once it's been applied. So, and there are certain restrictions, such as one restriction I'm aware of is you can use just 100 kilograms per hectare of biochar. So the compliance, as far as I'm aware, there's no compliance market worldwide that recognises biochar yet, and that's why we do, like other countries, I'm sure, focus on the voluntary carbon market. But we have also on there other submissions. We just to highlight, we also have a trade directory. So if you're looking for Australian or New Zealand technology, there's a list of technology providers and distributors and resellers there. Also, that's our code of practice that we mentioned. So you can download that there if you'd like to look further into that. And we deal, well, one of our corporate members, which is the Environmental Analysis Laboratory, we do recommend that our members use NATA accredited laboratories like EAL, but they, just as an example, have developed biochar analytical suites, which do align with our code of practice. So you can look at those there and get your biochar analysed and see if it meets our code of practice. We also have, just to mention, a users report, which was led by Professor Stephen Joseph and one of his PhD students, Samuel Robb, a number of years ago. But this is a really useful users report that has a number of case studies in it, which in all cases showed a return on investment. So you've got beef cattle supplement, avocados, potatoes, water saving in golf courses, of course, saline, soil remediation, cucumbers, biochar as a feed additive in a feedlot scenario, and zucchini. We also have some case studies there for the practice of wood vinegar use, showing significant increase in fruit and nut quantity and quality. So, yeah, there's our resources page there. And please feel free to download any information you'd like there. Just to give you a glimpse of the back end of what you get for your membership, there is, as mentioned, a 5-year-old library now. So we have a number of economic reports in there. We have also presentations from or recordings from our past conferences. We also have webinar recordings, all of the previous webinars. And then we go on to research papers by category. So biochar for soil, biochar for animal health, biochar for bioenergy, biochar for water filtration and soil remediation, and a number of papers on wood vinegar. So that's in our library there. And as far as the latest news goes, we often list that on our news page, and also we do have the monthly newsletter as well that goes out. But just to highlight particularly, we had a really good exposure through Landline, which is an agricultural program, television program, and so that's gives you a great overview of what's happening in Australia and New Zealand. A lot of nut. This story did focus on almond shells as well. So bioenergy with almond shells. And just wanted to highlight that ANZBIG will be having a pavilion at the Bio 360 Expo in Nantes in February next year. And we have an introduction to Matthew Smith from the Tree Media, who is putting together the proposed full-length documentary for biochar called The Biochar Effect. So it's been wonderful to talk with Matthew about his vision of the great global bio transition, and you can download his pitch deck there, both in a longer form and a shorter form. And of course, Matthew or Tree Media put together the documentary Ice on Fire, which was narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio. So we think this will be a really powerful tool for biochar in 2023. So we look forward to catching up with everyone in Nantes for those other associations and who are going to that. And if you need to make contact with us, there's my contact details. We also, our cluster manager is Samantha Sagami, and also you can get directly in touch with our chair, Nigel Murphy. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me at execdirect@anzbig.org. And thank you once again to the IBI for inviting me to give this regional update at your annual symposium. Until next time, Charles.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And we're going to have our last regional update from IBI board member Lucia Brusingen. She's going to be presenting about the Africa region in place of our other board member, Veronica Kitti, who wasn't able to join us.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lucia Brusingen. I'm pleased to be here with you today. I've been active in the strategic definition and implementation of projects that promote sustainable development of communities for more than 25 years, paying attention to the people and the environment in which they live. Since 2007, I've been active in Africa, or perhaps in some countries of Africa, because as you know, Africa is a huge continent with 54 countries, for the introduction of biochar systems and in carrying out small-scale demonstrative projects, small-scale examples that translate scientific knowledge into good practices and examples that can be scaled, according to a systemic approach that goes from the identification of suitable waste biomass streams to the introduction of the appropriate pyrolytic technology and to the production and application of biochar involving the communities. I deal with every aspect of the supply chain, identifying the most promising balances that allow the systems to be maintained over time in poor contexts, where there is scarce availability of resources and where low-tech solutions have a greater chance to survive over time, and where the human factor is key to ensure sustainability. I'm honored to serve IBI as IBI board member since 3 years, and I'm here to to give you a presentation that was prepared by my colleague Veronica, who is not able to join us today. So please forgive me, but I'm not the author of the presentation, so perhaps I will be not that good to offer you all the insights, but I'll do my best to give you a good presentation. So next, please. So here is a short overview of what's going on actually in Africa. Consider that, generally speaking, in Africa, there is not a real industry already, apart from the example and what's happening in Cameroon, where Net Zero, the company from France, made the investment for a biochar plant, which was awarded with the X Prize this year. So apart from that, I'm not informed about big investment, big industries in Africa. What's going on in Africa? It's some projects which are scattered around the continent, and my colleague was able to capture some of these projects running in different projects. The first one is this Bier for Africa, which is a project aimed at developing agri-food systems. It's not a project on biochar, but biochar is playing an important role in this project. This project works in some countries: Uganda, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Senegal. So mainly West Africa and Central Africa, and where farmers are involved in a study and where the application of biochar is planned. Next, please. Next slide. Okay. Pyrolysis and biochar, as I said before, is a key technology, and the project is performing analysis on properties of biochar, characterization, and to be sure that the feedstock is good for the soil that it is applied to. And then there is also an activity on developing business model for upscaling these demonstrative and study activities. Next, please. Another project is performed in Ghana by the Ithaca Institute. I guess it's from Switzerland, but in 2020, Ithaca started with a pyrolytic kiln to produce biochar and to apply biochar to cocoa, which is a very important commodity, especially in West Africa and in those countries. The activity is ongoing, and Ithaca is planning to replicate the process in other African countries where cocoa is key as an agronomic crop. Next, please. Another important project is run in Malawi, Tanzania, DRC, Kenya, and Ghana from Walmart, which is a social. It has a social impact enterprise. They are working with smallholders, which are trained to produce biochar, and biochar is then used in their animal feed to improve health, hygiene, and to be sold in, as market in the market. Of course, you can imagine that NGOs are working in poor context where the food security is a major issue to address. So biochar is, in this case, is offering an opportunity not only to produce carbon removals or carbon credits for the market, which is of course an important asset of biochar, but for the farmers, for the end users perspective, the soil fertility and the application to grow more crops and to get more yield is very, very much important. Next, please. Another project is Biochar Plus. Biochar Plus was working in West Africa, in Ethiopia, in Zimbabwe. And the Biochar Plus aimed at building capacities, mainly with some demonstrative activities developed in these countries. The Biochar Plus was focused around the introduction of pyrolytic clean cooking stoves. The model is the ELSA stove, which perhaps some of you have heard about. I will say something more a little later. And this project was started up some biochar related activities in these countries. Next, please. So these are some examples. As you see in the upper right part of the slide, you can see the stoves that were used to produce biochar and then to apply the biochar into the field. So there were some farmers' field trial that were involved in this activity, and some examples are shown in the pictures. And smallholders were involved by the local NGOs in this process. Next, please. So here is the project I'm coordinating in Burundi. Next, please. Where in Burundi there are ongoing activities with biochar since 2018, where the World Bank and European Union are financing some pilot activities and demonstrative activities in some areas of Burundi, in some provinces, ranging from the plain areas to the upper mountains. The systemic approach covers several aspects of the introduction of the technology: the identification of useful waste streams, which are available to smallholder farmers. And we use the palm oil kernels, corn cobs, coffee residues, sawdust, and other wastes that are available in the local landscape. Of course, as you know, the residues cannot be always available in aggregated form, as for instance, coffee residues, which are mainly available in huge amounts. But it can be available, most of the time they are available scattered in the landscape. And this poses a lot of questions on how we can collect this fuel. As you know, in this rural context, the fuel collection is an activity which is performed by women. And most of the time, these women goes to the forest, they cut the trees, or they just collect the piece of wood which are left there, and they are exposed to a lot of violence and and they waste time to go there. So there is an opportunity in this way to move them, to switch them from wood collection to waste collection, which is more on hand from their perspective. Then we started the local production of the ELSA pyrolytic clean cooking stove, and so we trained the artisans to produce the stove. Of course, the device is very low tech and it cannot be standardized or to a limit. And but we are working on that to fix some issues and to go to a standard stove that can be certified. Then the stove is introduced to the identified communities, and then we monitor the use of the stove, the smoke emissions of the stove, and the waste and the production of application of biochar produced by the stove. There is also another business that we started there, which is the local production of pellets, starting from local residues. Because in some areas where they don't have kernels, it's very important to get viable fuels for the stove, which are sustainable. So we started to produce pellets from sawdust and from corn cobs and from coffee residues. There is the opportunity also to test rice residues, because rice is produced in quantities. Next, please. Okay, here is the stove. This is the little device that we are producing locally in Burundi now. As you see, it's a very little TILAD device, really very simple to be built, also with locally available materials. And it can be built with local capacities and with really a hammer and a scissor for metal. And it's incredible how they can, what they can do just with very few tools. Next, please. So what's happened so far? A total of 240 stoves were produced and distributed for demonstrative activities in some villages, in some provinces, Bujumbura Rural, Kayanza, Ngozi, Murino, and Bururi. I'm not sure whether you know Burundi, but it's a nice country. The first stoves that we produced were we sourced the metal from Italy, and we shipped it, and we built the stove locally. But the next stoves were produced completely in Burundi. 200 families received one stove per family, plus 1 kilo of bean seeds, 5 kilos of biochar, just to start with the application to learn the technology, and 10 tons of maize cob were used to produce the biochar. Well, we trained the villagers. We selected some villagers because, of course, it takes a lot of human factor, of soft factor to stay there, to work with there, to show them how it has to be done. And then they can spread the technology to their neighbors. That works. When they see that the biochar is applied, the biochar produces more yield, they get more beans, more cobs from their fields, then they are happy to use the stove and to apply the biochar, and they talk very happily about the technology. And we have 40 more stoves that will be tested and introduced with a market-driven approach, but not sold at the market, because these stoves are cost a little bit more than the average stove they are used to. So for this reason, it's important that they understand the value of the stove. And the only way to understand the value is for them to get a peer-to-peer approach. When your neighbor, a farmer, tells you, okay, listen, this stove works very well, it gives a lot of benefits, because I can get more beans from my field using the stove, then they want to try the stove. Next, please. So that's the result. So on average, each family produces 250 grams of biochar per cooking event. Normally they cook twice a day, but sometimes once and sometimes not at all. And 80% of beneficiaries applied biochar into their fields. And we have an ongoing monitoring during the cropping seasons. And we know, we stay there, we see what they do, and we collect data. So we are generated primary data from our activities. And from our monitoring, the farmers anticipate a significant yield increase, and biochar in beans is this is not a surprise, but it's a confirmation. Of course, it works very well. Next, please. And this is a picture of one of our fields. Next, please. So what lessons have we learned? So the biomass availability is key to set up a system around biochar, of course, and it's key also in the transition from the normal, the baseline situation on stove use. They normally use 3 stones or a kind of Ginkgo stove, what they call it, brassiere, basically working with charcoal. And of course, in this case, the stove cost, the cost of the stove is very little, but the cost of charcoal in the market is very high. Charcoal is very high commodity. For this reason, when we find good opportunities for a waste stream to be utilized, then it's key to the adoption and to the energy transition as well. What we have learned is when you introduce a system, start by introducing biochar first, because when the farmers see that the biochar is very, very useful because it gives more yield, then they want to get more biochar, while the biochar is not available at the market, and they know that they can produce their own biochar just using the stove or in kilns. That's done. I mean, in this case, they can use the stove. So biochar is a very, very important driver for the stove to be introduced as well. So also for the energy transition from a dirty energy to a clean energy. And then also to introduce biochar, the involvement of the local community is key, because they have to own the technology, and our job is just to be there and to be sure that they perceive this technology as their technology. Next, please. This is a project which is ongoing in Ghana, where as an initiative, the local NGO run by Veronica is doing biochar in kilns, and is training farmers, local farmers, in biochar making and in biochar application into their farms. Next, please. So Veronica is aiming at increased biochar technology, the adoption of this technology by the smallholder farmers, to increase food security and to teach them how to get stronger for the climate change, to the negative impacts of climate change, mainly adaptation, and also to be useful for mitigation. Next, please. So which are the biochar opportunities in Africa? Next. Although there is a limited information on biomass concentration, agro and forest wastes are available, largely available. There are resources which are available on farm and perhaps in aggregated form, and other resources which are available off farms. Processing centers, farm fields, and waste dumps can be available everywhere throughout Africa. And the waste biomass is there, it just needs to be exploited. Next, please. So the other opportunity is that all African governments, of course, all those who participate to the Paris Agreement, they are looking for alternative ways to produce to generate credits and to meet their national determined contributions. And for these reasons, every African country could benefit a lot from biochar in their countries. Next, please. So all these projects are showing a lot of potential and are developing a market in Africa. To me, what is missing from this presentation is, there are some other activities that I traced. For instance, in Egypt, where they are producing an industrial plant at scale, and perhaps there are some people here, some participants here who can say something about that. And also there is a Finnish corporation who developed some research projects in Sinai, Mount Sinai. And also in Zambia, where there are some Swedish researchers which are active there. And in Kenya as well. To my knowledge, in Kenya, they are also launching a biochar research center, something. Forgive me, I don't have the real name of this center, but that would be very interesting because it can work on biochar, which is really, really very interesting opportunity. And next, please. Next, okay. So which are the issues that can be addressed by biochar? Of course, soil health and soil productivity, animal health, food security, energy security, because with the stoves you can access energy also in rural communities, to build a climate resilient economies, hygiene in the household, clean water and wastewater management. To me, it's very important that to underline that a biochar system can address very well some of the sustainable development goals in the UN agenda. For sure, no poverty, because it increases yield and revenues for smallholders. It reduces the need for fertilizers for people who can have a limited access to fertilizers. This will really mean a lot. Well, it can generate carbon credits from reduction and removal, and decrease the reliance on farm purchases and inputs. And then it offers the opportunity to start new businesses and activities, for instance, for the transformation of low-value waste biomass into pellet or briquettes, or into directly biochar to produce the stoves, as it is happening now in Burundi, to produce biochar and commercialize biochar. This is something that can happen and is happening. As climate soil, smart climate soil improver, biochar can address the zero hunger SDG. And of course, there are other opportunities to use pyrolysis with, for instance, bones and other waste, and produce other valuable products like calcium phosphate. And it improves the resilience of farms. So it offers a lot of opportunity. Besides, of course, the climate aspect. And it improves food safety, immobilize heavy metals and toxins in soils, reduce bacteria, reduce air pollution from crop and wood burning, and it offers many, many opportunities. So for this reason, I think that biochar is a huge opportunity for Africa. Not only to generate credits and to be part of this international and global wave, but also to benefit directly from its use. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Lucia, thank you so much. We're going to call the panelists up onto the stage now for our Q&A. As you might imagine, the hour is quite uncomfortable in China as well as Australia, but we will be able to answer some of the questions that you all have posted in the Q&A, and feel free to continue to add them. In addition to the panelists, we're also going to add Mike Leach from the X Prize Carbon Removal Prize, and he'll be available to answer questions as well as talk a little bit about the Carbon Removal Prize. Actually, Mike, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me this morning. I'm here representing the X Prize Carbon Removal. Some of you may know we have a $100 million competition running for demonstrations of carbon removal technologies. And so far in the competition, biochar has done very well. We've had a very strong showing. Just last year, we released, we awarded $15 million in funding. I know at least one of the winners of those awards is here this week. So be sure to check out Team Net Zero. Axel Reinhold is going to be speaking, I think, later on. But beyond that, I think we had 11 out of our 60 top teams were biochar-oriented teams. And the big message for me today is the competition's still open. We're looking for new entries. We're also looking for ways to support all of our teams in standing up carbon removal demonstrations. And I'm going to be on hand with my colleague Rupa during the networking session at 10. So if you have any questions, feel free to grab us there, and we'd love to meet you. Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. So I'm going to go into some questions for the panelists, and I'm going to start with one that was submitted. So the question, and we're going to kind of get right into the heart of one of that industry's sort of thorny issues, if you will. The question was focused on the U.S. biochar market and looking at large customers or bulk purchasers. But I think that this would be an interesting question to look at from all the regions that we had represented. And we've got Kathleen Draper up here who will be helping to augment the regions that we have represented. So the question is, I guess, and we can just go around through each of the panelists, is really looking at what market size and what sort of large scale orders is the industry looking at currently? And do you have any predictions that you're willing to make about where that will be growing in the next year or so? John, do you want to go on the hot seat first? Well, John, I think you're muted still. I'm going to give you a second, and Harald, I will put you on the hot seat.
Thanks. So about the US market, I think I'm not as informed, but the European market, I've shown a couple of graphs that are, I think, responding to that. So I was talking mainly about the carbon sequestration potential, or the actual carbon sequestration. So we have reached 100,000 tons this year, which means 40,000 tons of actual production and application of biochar in a carbon conserving way. And with growth rates of 80% that we're facing in those last years, 70, 80, and we see that growth continuing for at least 1-2 years, and after that you can't tell, but I'm imagining that it would continue somehow like that. I'm seeing an exponential growth, which leads to very relevant scales in a very short amount of time.
Excellent. John, do we have you with us now? Okay, we'll work on that. Kathleen, can you weigh in a little bit on we can either talk about Australia, Asia Pacific in general?
Well, I would defer to folks like Annette Cowie and Don on Australia. I did review their roadmap, which was impressive. They are also looking at pretty impressive growth rates. It's a little bit harder to nail that down for China from what we've been, asking over the past years. If John can't talk, I will just chime in on the U.S. question that we are seeing exponential growth in the U.S. I talk to people all the time, at least weekly, that are saying we have the capability to put up a plant. We have the biomass. We know the technology. The limiting factor is very much the buyers of the biochar. I think if we can crack that nut, we will have 100% growth rate per year or more. But until we get that, investors are still a little gun shy of putting money into this before they know how much they can get for that biochar. Even with the code 336 that John talked a lot about, we have to prove that ground over the next year or so.
Yeah. And some of the encouraging things is that we already have people submitting proposals for 336. I've been working with Brandon Smith, who was formerly with the NRCS. So I think it's only a small matter of time before we see this hit the viable market. I think within the first couple of quarters of next year, we're going to see large offtake agreements come into place for that, and the market's going to be rolling. So I think what I would like to do is I would like to encourage those producers that have been on the fence in entering the market to go ahead and do so now, with the understanding that there is so much federal funding available. This is massive. It is going to make a tremendous difference. The only part I'm not a fan of on this whole program is that there's not an LCA at this moment. So I think we're going to see some folks that are shipping biochar back and forth across the country because they can buy it at a lower rate. Hopefully we can find a way to change that and guide the conversation in such a way as to encourage adoption of biochar from the local market rather than going at a larger size. And this is not going to afford external biochars to be implemented into the soils. So you will be buying the product from the U.S. to install in the U.S. soils.
Excellent. Harald, did you have another point?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting situation that you are having with the funding and with the extra money you're getting for the applications. I'm sure this will boost the industry in the US. What I see on our side is also a different approach, and that is, for example, one of our latest members, Vow Green Metals. They are substituting fossil carbon in applications like silicium production, something you need for solar panels, for example. And they actually need basically pure carbon, which is very difficult to source, and normally is sourced from fossil sources. And they can substitute that with biogenic carbon. And this is a very interesting approach to deliver very large quantities in the scale of tens of thousands of tons, and then find markets. So if you can establish a contract with a very large off-taker for such applications, you can then also develop into other markets. And I think their concept is something that's very promising. So there are different approaches to the subject.
One thing that I thought was really interesting is I had another biochar producer that's entering the market, and what they're doing is they're looking to go with cost plus agreements, especially with government entities, in order to get the market rolling. So effectively, you're eliminating the risk, you're providing quality product at a very fair market rate. The contract is based on performance rather than having to invest in it blindly. So. And then backed by these other project finance opportunities that are starting to show up, I think we're really going to see a rapid adoption. Of course, we need it to go faster, but I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing now.
Lucia, without asking you to necessarily comment on market size in Africa, I wonder if there are any resources that you're aware of or any kind of market data that we can point to looking at the industry and or activities in general in the continent?
what I see, of course, my perspective, my angle is a little bit different, and yeah, it's true. In Africa, what I have, my experience and also studies says that the waste biomass is there. So it only needs to be organized in a way that biochar can be produced, and so investments are needed to do that, and of course are needed at scale, because if we want to produce credits, we need to have huge quantities and to work in quantities. So we need to look for waste biomass which are available, not scattered in the landscape, but in aggregated form, in farms or in industrial activities already there, and which can be available. Africa is challenging because there might be some opportunities in terms of waste biomass availability, but perhaps energy is not available or not stable enough. And also roads cannot be that good. And so there are some issues that needs to be considered. The risk is higher. But on the other hand, it's really interesting because, well, we can imagine to produce as much biochar as we want in Europe or in developed countries, but that will not be enough. So we need to look for sustainable opportunities also there. And this will be a good opportunity for the continent. But of course, industries need to be industries, and the financial market needs to be ready to invest in those places. What's happening now, from my perspective, but it's something which is under negotiation, so I'm not sure whether I can say something on that. But also for the stoves, which of course stoves are not at that scale. But if you imagine not to work with 100 stoves, but 10,000 stoves, then it can make a difference. If you have a good stove, and if you can produce or secure that the quality of biochar produced is that level, then it can be also feasible on that level. We are opening a negotiation with a huge industry in Kenya, but that's something that needs to be still developed, and it is still under discussion. But the opportunities are there. So of course, I think that on these countries, the private sector can play an important role, but also governments and multilateral organizations can should consider biochar as an opportunity in their portfolio, as a solution with other solutions that they can use, but as a solution in their national portfolios.
I might point out also, given that this is a regional update panel, that there, of course, is some cross-regional cooperation just within IBI's membership. Mike had mentioned Net Zero. We also have Coyne, which is just opening a very large-scale project on the continent. And then, of course, Warmpart International. So I think we're definitely seeing work that's being done, taking technology or know-how and experience to work with people on the continent as well. Well, I'm going to shift a little bit as we're on the eve of COP15, which will be looking at biodiversity. We had a question come in about how can the growth of the biochar industry avoid overexploitation of natural resources. They had mentioned forests in particular, and I thought that that would be a good question to have a round robin on as well. Who'd like to start?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment that this is a frequent fear in the biochar space, that it'll morph into the food versus fuel debate, where we will be purposefully growing crops just for fuel, or for feedstock. So far, it's my opinion that the biochar methodologies that are giving carbon removal credits, are not allowing for that kind of biomass to be used for biochar that you will get carbon credits for. I think we need to keep them on that path. That's been voluntarily adopted by Puro and I believe the Carbon Future and now the new Vera. So that's my 2 cents. I think it is something we have to be vigilant about and hope not to see it happen.
Should I go?
Yes.
So my take on this is that first I would think it has exactly the other type of effect that you would you could increase productivity on agricultural soils, use the residues. But it's not only the biochar application and use, it's a combination of agricultural techniques or practices. And we see that, for example, with one of our members who is active in the planting of hedges on fields. So if you actually use, which is recommended, 5% of agricultural fields for hedges, you increase biodiversity, you increase the water in soils because they actually take up water from underground, and you would also have a source of biomass for carbonization. Then you use it for biochar production, and then you can again limit adverse effects of agricultural practices that are rather common. So I would say that you really have to scale it up to a really different level until you even have this issue if you're using the existing biomass wisely. So sustainable sourcing is a key issue, as Kathleen said, and that's in the existing methodologies. And then we would also not only think about the adverse effect it could have, but first about the beneficial effects and compare those to other carbon sequestration technologies. Just to add.
Excellent. John, did you have anything to add, or?
I am encouraged by the fact that most of the producers I've been speaking to are very concerned about species and habitat. I believe that most producers are in this for the long term. They understand that a strong ecosystem requires proper and responsible management practices. So that means everybody always asks, "Oh, are you going to go cut down oak growth forest to make biochar?" No, we're not. It's not the goal. That does not appear to be the industry goal. And I can't speak for all players, but I do believe that the ethos is here, and I know that it's being pushed by most practitioners in the field.
Meg, is there any piece of the criteria for the carbon removal price that's relevant for this aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit of a fish out of water, as I'm not deep in the biochar space, but I think a lot of the issues that are coming up resonate. They're not limited to biochar, and we've tried to accommodate them in the XPRIZE guidelines. So, one of the points is every team needs to acknowledge the sustainability of their feedstocks, and that's true if you're doing biochar. That's true if you're doing anything else that consumes biomass. I saw there were some questions about LCAs. We try to run everyone through at least a carbon accounting process, and then in the later stages of the competitions, we will be doing a more comprehensive LCA on our finalist teams. And lastly, on the markets, understanding that full sort of downstream supply chain and the end of life of the products, whether they be biochar or anything else, is critical to understanding the long-term carbon benefits of the system. So, we're trying to kind of keep it high level and holistic, and we rely on experts such as yourselves. Kathleen, you were a reviewer in our last round of the competition, and so one of our objectives is to engage this community to make sure that everyone's on the right track and following best practices. And really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make sure that the claims of successful teams are substantiated and that we can rely on the carbon benefits that are being promised.
Indeed. Well, I wanted to shift really quickly for one more group question, then we have a couple minutes for regional specific questions. We have a couple questions that are asking around specifics for methodologies and or standards. And I did want to mention that both Carbon Future as well as Pearl Earth have exhibitor booths that you'll be able to go to, and this would be a great place to go and ask questions there as well, in addition to, for today only, XPRIZE and Mike and a colleague will be at their table. But the question, one question was looking at methodologies that are relevant for low tech or low production amount of biochar, and I wondered if we could dive into that piece a little bit, and of course any other relevant pieces of other methodologies that are geared towards larger scale production. Kathleen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I am aware of maybe half a dozen methodologies that are either rolled out already or in process that are looking at compensating smallholder farmers that are using low tech equipment. I know there's also a desire to have some equipment like the air curtain burner or Tiger Cat, which I don't know the status on that. And that is something you may want to ask either Carbon Future or Puro in their rooms or lounges. But yes, they exist. They are starting to be rolled out as far as I know. I know Warm Hearts International is working on educating farmers in Africa, and they're using this artisan C-Sync methodology, which is being developed by Carbon Standards International and deployed through the Carbon Future platform. That's the one I'm most familiar with. But as I said, there's a growing number of these coming out, which I think is really needed so that these farmers will shift away from, either burning the crops or doing something else, which isn't quite as climate friendly.
Did anyone else have anything that we wanted to add for this? Going on then to some of our regional questions. John, there are a couple people that wanted to clarify that when you were talking about projects that could produce up to 20,000 tons a day, they wanted to make sure that they heard you right.
Yeah, I corrected that in the chat. It
Okay.
was a typo in there. So
absolutely.
More in the 20 tons per year range. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have aspirations moving in that.
Yeah, isn't it? Let's go. Somebody will do it. Somebody will do it. It's just a matter of time.
We also had a lot of questions that are looking at market size. And I think that I wanted to mention again that IBI will be conducting a global market research study and releasing it in 2023. We, of course, have the very recent market research that EBI has released. And I wondered if there are any other resources that anyone on the panel would like to point to that are sort of pieces of the puzzle, if you will, around quantifying market size, both by regions as well as globally.
I think I get asked that question at least once a week. What are the numbers for the US and, how do we verify that? And Europe has really led the charge here, and they did it in a very strategic way, looking at production capacity more so than what are the markets. I think both are really needed. And we are looking at not only at IBI coming up with something next year, a market study, but also USBI. And so what we're trying to do within IBI is to coordinate. So each of the regions can help with that effort. And then we'd have some consistent data, which could be rolled up internationally. So that's a high priority for IBI next year.
Harald, will there be an updated market research study in the next couple of years from EBI?
Yes, we're doing this every year. And every year I would suppose it to be a bit more comprehensive even than the year before. Yeah. So, of course, what Kathleen said is looking at not the production capacity and an actual production, but also at the markets and the different applications would be interesting. But of course, that would be another another step and would demand quite some resources.
Absolutely. We're moving on to a couple of questions that we're looking at China in particular, and I'm hoping that we can crowdsource the answer to this question. One was looking at whether, generally speaking, biochar is being used in mostly regenerative and or conventional agriculture.
I'll take a stab at that. The last time I was in China, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID, obviously, we visited plants that were huge, and they were really focused on more conventional agriculture at the time. That said, one of the people I was there with is my co-author of Burn, Albert Bates, and he has gone over to China multiple times to work with and train Chinese farmers on regenerative agriculture. So it is a bit of both, but I think the huge national push is for these very large scale machines. And part of that is because they have so much crop burning there. So they're trying to aggregate the small farm residues at these very large production plants, and they are combining it with chemical fertilizer. But the idea there is that they're able to use a lot less chemical fertilizer, and they're utilizing their resources in a much more climate friendly way.
Excellent. Did anyone have anything else to add or even to comment on regen versus conventional agricultural uses of biochar in your respective regions?
Well, actually, I see it in both, and I think it kind of makes sense in any type of agricultural practices. So, and that's okay. I mean, at the moment, I have the feeling that we have kind of a shift from even fertilizer producing companies to rethink the idea of biochar, because it actually reduces the need of NPK fertilizer, and Haber-Bosch is getting a bit more expensive at the moment due to energy prices. So if you can cut the use of nitrogen, and you can drastically cut it apparently, then that might make a business case also. And you have this reduced nitrate leaching. You have some rather strict thresholds in Europe and application rates of nitrogen. So that means you have only the possibility to apply a very reduced amount, and this is also where you have to think about making the most use of it, which is rather an economical perspective, but it actually has an ecological implication, which I really like. And if you would combine that smartly with the biochar application and production, of course, then you could make something a lot better than we are at the moment. Not depending on the type of agriculture, if it's conventional or biological, as we call it.
To me, if I can add something, to me it's very important in the places where I work. To me, it's very important to understand very clearly what are the inputs that the farmers can access. I mean, in some places they don't have access to fertilizers neither, or they have a poor access to fertilizers, or perhaps they have compost, they know how to produce compost, or they have animals, so they can have something to use in their fields. But in some other places they don't. So it's very important to understand very well which are the inputs that they can rely on, and then to build out of those inputs and to frame a system around biochar, starting from that, from the real situation in place. So biochar can always add value to the local conditions, always, whatever you do with biochar. So it's really very interesting from this perspective, and farmers are always happy when they learn how to make the best use of biochar into the field. So that's to me the very important thing. So, and this is true in poor context and in rich contexts, because in those contexts, you can use biochar in a different way, but you can still use it. So that you have to start from the end user's perspective.
Lucia, you've ended us on a beautiful and also hopeful note. We are going to wrap up our presentations for the day and move into the networking portion of our event. You'll just need to go back to to leave this session, and you'll be able to access the tables as well as the exhibitor booth after we close up. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We have over 300 people who have joined from, again, over 35 countries. I know that you're setting up meetings and having a lot of side conversations, which is exactly what we hope you'll use this platform for. I also want to thank our panelists for taking time to share their expertise. They really are the heart and making of this event. And of course, our sponsors who are supporting us. Please make sure to visit IBI's booth as well. It'll be variously staffed by Kathleen Draper, myself, and Mehedine Abbasi, our development manager. And of course, take advantage of being able to answer one-on-one or ask questions one-on-one with the XPRIZE carbon removal team. I'll look forward to seeing you all, and I hope more of you tomorrow for day 2 of Raising Climate Ambitions with Biochar.